The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone to the monthly gamesalad meetup. This is Alan Uthoff, our Black Cloak GS on the forums. Welcome you to the meetup. It's great to see everybody out here. We got record attendance this time. I got Steve Jakob here, one of our senior engineers.
Hello.
Going to be doing a presentation in just a minute. We got Jonathan in the back corner, our senior game designer, and Tan over here in the corner, which you can't see, he's off camera. One of our founders and lead web developer. We got some Darian, who braves the cold here in Texas, which is not cold necessarily if you're in Ohio or in Iowa, but cold enough for Texas. So we thank you for coming out. So we're going to be talking about networking. I know some people have come to talk about graphene or ask questions. We'll all field questions after the presentation, after the Q&A for the presentation. I'll field questions. I may not be able to answer a lot of them. We're not speaking publicly about a lot of details, but I will field what I can. And Tam may be able to field some as well if I can. All right. Well, after this poll, if you want to, we done with the poll, Tam?
Waiting for it to hit 70%, just to make sure people are paying attention.
All right. So answer the poll, and then we will start the presentation.
I think I only need one more person to answer the poll. So if you haven't yet, or when 2 minutes pass.
Yeah. We're 2 minutes past. Tick. So we'll try this time schedule out. We moved it to Thursday, and then of course there's possible meetup conflict here in town, but we'll just play it by ear and see how things go.
So there are no, either you're pro or you just don't want to talk about it.
All right. Well, Steve's going to talk about plays together and networking. Unfortunately, we don't have the server. We're still on maintenance on, so we don't have a live demo for you guys tonight. But I'll let Steve take it away and show you guys about networking and play with plays together.
Okay, yeah, as Alan said, I had hoped to have an actual live demo going today, but unfortunately we were having some problems with the servers this week, and so that wasn't able to be finished. So instead we have a slideshow presentation in which we'll go over kind of the basic functionality of plays together. Now it's not we're not going to go over everything because there's a lot of stuff you can do in it. But we'll go over the basic functionality to be able to create a multiplayer game. First of all, we should talk about what Plays Together actually is and what kind of things you can do with it. It allows you to make turn-based asynchronous multiplayer games. So it's going to be every player has a turn, and everybody takes their turn one at a time. It's not, you can't do a game like Rochambeau, where everybody's taking their turn simultaneously. You can't make a massively multiplayer game or a fighting game where everybody's doing something simultaneously. It's more for things like if you wanted to emulate a board game, you could do that with this system. Or if you want to do something like Words with Friends, you would be able to do that with this system. You can have a maximum of 8 players. In theory, we could increase that, but that's kind of a decent compromise because we have to create a table for every player, and we have to do that ahead of time. So if we supported 32 players, we'd have to create 32 tables, one for each player, even though your game might only have two players. And so that's a lot of data that's wasted. So 8's decent. And frankly, probably most multiplayer games will have 8 or less players anyway. Most of them will actually probably just have 2. One thing that's very good about the Plays Together system is that no dedicated server is needed. Unlike the other multiplayer system that gamesalad supports, you don't actually need a server to run commands. That means that on the gamesalad side, there's a lot more things you have to do because there's a lot more commands rather than just simply get and send data. But on the plus side, you don't actually have to have your own computer running your own server, and you have to worry about writing server code and all that. However, the downside is that on our side, on the Plays Together side, no code is actually run. The Plays Together system is basically a giant database. and it simply takes data that you send it and sends it over to other players. So if you want to do something like verify that someone isn't cheating, you have to do that in your game. You can't have a server test to make sure the data is good. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind when designing a multiplayer game. And it will be available for Mac and Windows Creator 0.13 when they come out. It's been available on Mac Creator and the nightly builds for some time now. And we're just spinning up Windows to version 1.2, and we will be adding it to Windows 1.3 when that comes out. I think that's it there. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions about the talk as it's going on, please ask them when it comes up, so that we don't have to, go back and try to remember.
So, just to help you, I can see them in the question section. You see them little tick mark thing.
You know what you mean?
Blue bar.
This?
Yeah.
There we go. And then also, you can raise your hand too in this. If you raise your hand, if you need an audio, if you want to speak, we can unmute you as well.
Okay. So the first thing you need to do when setting up a multiplayer game is sign up on the Plays Together site so you can register yourself as a developer and actually create the backend for your game. The web address is developer.playstogether.com, and you'll see a login here, and you can sign up, and it'll have sign up information, and you'll enter in, when you go to log in, you enter in your username, which is actually your email address, and your password, and log in. What you want to do is this is the first screen you hit when you log in. What you want to do is you want to hit create a new game. And you see this information here, DAU, MAU, new players. All this is basically demo data, effectively. This data isn't actually hooked up to the game yet. We need to modify the servers and the web servers so that this actually provides good information. But for now, just ignore the stuff on my developer dashboard. That's all in beta right now, and it's just dummy data that's being shown. So as you're testing your game, the stuff you're seeing won't be reflected on here. When we get to release, this will be working. But what you want to do is click on the New Game button, and you will go to a screen like this. And the middle section here, the highlighted section here, is stuff you want to fill in. There's the game name, and that's basically to just identify it on the back-end side, on the website. You won't actually need this for your game on gamesalad side. Game description, you can type in anything here. It's just to remind yourself what the game is. It's not used. The important part, however, is the active. If this is clicked to yes, your game will be available and you will be able to talk to the server. If it's set to no, when you try to connect to the server, you'll get an error back saying, I can't connect. Someone says, can't we see the slides?
I'm still finding out more information.
Yes, somebody not being able to see the slides.
Is anyone having trouble seeing the screen?
On mine.
I see it from the video. Oh, make the.
It's more like a presentation after the fact, like seeing the slides online.
I see screen and video. Okay, somebody.
Yep.
Actually, if no one minds, I am going to turn off the video. You have to turn off the video.
Yeah, I was going to say. They want me so they can see it bigger. Yeah, for some reason it's showing really small. I feel like that, though. Well, I can zoom in. They can also, you can zoom.
Yeah, that won't
zoom anything. I can zoom it here, but the problem is it's something on your machine.
On my machine?
Yeah, somehow it's... There we go.
Like I can see it fine from here too, so I think it's Oh, are you showing only the window? Oh, well, we're seeing what you're screen now. So.
Yeah. I'm hitting play on the preview, or on the demo thing, so... Yeah, this is the size that it's showing it as. For some reason, it's not showing it full screen. Not sure...
Let's just try it. Can everyone see? Let's see. Can everyone see it now?
Yeah, zoom. Use the zoom feature there if you need to go in bigger.
Okay, are we good?
All right, people are trying to see it. So.
Okay.
All right.
So let me go back here. So this is the login on Plays Together. As you see, developer.playstogether.com. So you log in, go to create a new game on the left-hand side. Click on that. And then enter in the game name and set the game to active. Like I said, the game description is just for your own reminder. It's not shown anywhere, and you don't need it anywhere in GameSalad. The stuff below that, the property name, property value, all that is not actually used by our system in GameSalad. It's part of the Plays Together, but it's not actually part of the back end of the Plays Together, but it's not actually used in GameSalad's interface to it, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. Once you create your game, you'll be shown to you'll be able to click on the game on the left-hand side here. So here's tic-tac-toe up on the upper left. And you will get to a screen that is supposed to show you basically how many people are playing your game. Again, this is all dummy data, so don't pay attention to it. But there is something you do have to pay attention to, and that's the game key. You're going to want to copy that down, or just cut and paste it. You're going to be wanting to copy it and cut and paste it into GameSalad when you create your project on the GameSalad site. The other thing you want to note is the account button in the upper right-hand corner here, because there's values that you're going to be wanting there. So once you get the game key, you want to click on Account, and you'll see a screen like this. And you want to get the developer private key and the developer public key. The game key, the private key, and the public key will all be needed to set up your game on GameSalad Creator. So once you've set up your game and you've set it to active and you've got the 3 keys, you can go into GameSalad and start working on your game. So here we are. Once you've logged in, and make sure you do log in, because multiplayer with Plays Together is for pro only, so you need to log into it so the creator knows you're pro. When you create a new project, you will see the multiplayer drop-down at the bottom of the project info. You want to select Together Games as the option there, and it will show a private, public, and game key entry. And what you're going to do is enter the keys that were on the Plays Together site into those three entries.
I think we may have I have a hand raised for a question. Phil, I'm going to unmute you real quick. Can you hear us, Philip? Hello?
Hello.
And...
Okay, I just oh, you got a voice now?
Yep,
Yeah.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. I still don't have an image. I've just got the monthly GameSalad meetup. Go to webinar, Citrix. So since you turned off the whatever, we've just got audio.
You don't see the screen?
So you may need to adjust the window size, because the check.
No, sorry, I've already tried that.
Did you try on the window? There's a zoom level. Have you tried looking at that?
On the window. Actually, both webcams and the Zoom are dimmed out.
Oh.
Yeah, no, they're dimmed out, but you can, let's see here. Oh,
No, they're dimmed out, then they can't access them.
You may be using the wrong version of GoTo webinar or go-to meeting for this? Because sometimes they'll let you run this older version and not see everything.
No, I just downloaded it onto a new Retina iMac, and I downloaded it about 5 minutes before you started.
Okay.
Might try running it in low res mode.
Even under, yeah, it's the image that I've got is probably only about
Like a postage stamp, like a really small size.
No, 1600 wide. Oh no, it was fine before until you swapped out to the slides. At the beginning, I could see the video.
Which one's the video? Yeah,
You guys, not the video, but are you guys sitting in the room, the live feed? See, even under the view menu on the GoToMeet. Now you guys are back.
So
And I didn't.
where's the video showing up in your window? At the top or bottom? Because there's a little bar you can use to adjust the split of the screen.
Don't know if you just heard that, but it popped back in. Now I can see you guys sitting at the table.
Yeah, we turned it off. We turned it off a little while ago because we got some people having problems with the slide. But if you guys want to leave it on, leave it on.
So you guys are back.
Yeah,
Well, now that,
okay.
you still won't be able to see the slide though.
Oh,
Still no slides though.
you still don't see the slides on there?
So
Nope.
underneath, like on the edge of the video, there is a slider you can adjust, and that will change the split between the video and the presentation. See if you can find that and slide that around.
Afraid I can't see any slider.
Or it's like a little handle used like a window split, and you can see like an iframe and stuff like that. If you don't see it, I'm not sure how we can help you other than having you come back in, like log out and come back in.
Well, at least I can see you guys.
Well, fortunately, we managed to turn it off because the other thing is some people the video pushes. It works the other way. For some people, the video pushes the screen off.
Yeah, but you can just use the slider bar though to make the video smaller.
But you can't see the slider bar.
I can toggle you full
Oh,
screen, small, and resize the window. That all works.
Can I resize the window? Let's make it that way. Let's see. I can resize it on mine, but I'm not in the organizer.
Yeah, you can do it. It's something on your client side over there.
Ah.
I'm not sure how to show it.
Why? Sometimes. Sorry about the difficulty here, guys.
Technical problems.
Does anyone else have this problem?
No, I couldn't help it.
No one said anything.
That zoom in at all, anybody? No.
That's local to you.
Yeah, this is all most of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know how to adjust. I'm not familiar enough with this to know how to make it bigger.
Anyway, audio's good enough.
Okay.
Well, we will be posting the slides
Yeah, and I have a recording.
and the audio, so hopefully
great.
that'll work out.
All right.
Thanks.
Try
I'll
to
mute myself.
back off just for the people who are having trouble seeing without the video.
Take you one second. All right. Okay. Turn this off. Okay.
Okay.
I'll keep doing some research and figure out how to make this.
Okay. Meanwhile, back on gamesalad. Yeah, log in as pro, set the multiplayer value to together games, and enter in the 3 keys, the public, private, and game key that you got from the Plays Together website. And that will let your game communicate with the server and make sure that the data you're getting is for that particular game. Now, if you decide to create multiple games, you could do that with just the same user login, and your private and public key will be the same for you over however many games you decide to create. The only thing that will change will be the game key. So just keep that in mind if it's useful. So once you create once you set up the multiplayer to together games, a bunch of data is actually created for you by us. There's several tables, a bunch of new attributes, and there's also some functions. One thing to note is that because GameSalad doesn't have the ability to filter functions based on pro or not, the functions exist whether you're logged in or pro or not. However, they are basically useless unless you actually are running a network game. So we can go over some of these very quickly, and we'll get into more detail as we go through the talk. The tables are basically the kind of the primary way you're going to communicate game information back and forth between the players. The network game instances is how you get a list of who's playing what game And so that's how you can do matchmaking. The network game data is a table that basically has global game information. So the information is going to be shared and be able to be modified by all players. However, if you want game data that's only available to a particular player that only that player can modify, we also create players called network player game data _1, _2, _3, etc. up to 8. And those will only be available to be modified by the particular player that the table is assigned to, and we'll get to how they're assigned in a minute. We also have network player data table, and this is a data table that applies to that particular player over any game they play that you create. So, for instance, if you have several different games that you've created, and you want to keep track of, like, the counts, and you want to be able to have the user see, how many times they played every single game of yours that they've got. You can actually store that data in that particular table, and no matter what game they're actually playing, they'll still get that data back. And Network Achievements Placed Together has its own achievement system, which we will not be going into this talk. But you can use this table to see what achievements the players have gotten. One thing to note on network game data and network player data are both starred on the chart here. That means that you can actually create new tables and assign them as game data tables or player data tables, so you're not restricted to just a single table for your game data. You can create, however many tables you want, and in the table creation GUI, you can actually assign it as a game data table or a player data table, and it will be associated with that data and sent over the network. With that data is sent over the network. You cannot do that with the table that's assigned to a specific player. Only one table exists for that. So you'll have to keep your data straight and decide how you want to lay out your data. The functions, there's basically two pairs of functions. One is to translate a player number, so player number 1, player number 2, player number 3, and get their network ID. Every player in a game has a specific network ID that is associated with them that basically tells the server who the player is. The server doesn't really care, this guy's player 1 or this guy's player 2. The server actually wants this player is ID, 10,687. And that player is going to be defined by that number. And so you can use the top two functions to get that player ID or player ID for the player number or vice versa. The bottom two functions are actually related to the network player game data _1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how you actually find a particular table for a particular player. So you have, for instance, player number 1, and you know his ID. Then you can call network player table for ID, pass in that player's network ID, and it will return a reference to a table that's associated with that player. And then you can use that function anywhere in anything where you would use a table. So get table, set table cell, and they show different usernames has been fixed. No, that has not been fixed yet. We are still working on bug fixes. So I had hoped to actually announce that a lot of the known network bugs have been fixed by now, but unfortunately, as you know, the Place Together website has been down for the past week or so. So I was unable to get that opportunity, but we will be fixing them soon. So yes, the bottom two are basically to get the network player game data for a particular player. The attributes go over very quickly. They're all under the game.networking. So if you're looking at the expression editor, you'll go to game. Under the game, there's a section called networking, and under that section, there are all these attributes. The game ID is the game currently being played. Player ID is the player who's actually on the device. Creator ID is the ID of the person that created the game. Player count is the number of players currently in the game. This may be less than the max number of players that can be in the game if not everyone has joined the game yet. So for instance, when the game is first created, player count will be 1. And then when the next player joins, player count will be 2, etc. until you hit the number of players that the game actually supports. Game started is just a flag saying, hey, the game is actually being played. Current player is the ID of the player whose turn is currently in. Current turn is a number saying which player is active, but it's essentially just an integer. It increases, starts at 1, and increases every time a player takes a turn. So the first player takes a turn will be 1. Next player takes a turn will be 2, and so on, and it basically just increases forever until the game's over. Current round increments when everybody's taking a turn. So if you have a 4-player game, current turn will start at 1, current round will start at 1, and then current turn will go 1, 2, 3, 4, and once it gets to 5, then current round will go to 2. So it's important to keep those straight if you're going to use those, that turn is per player and round is for the entire group of players. Winner is the ID of the person that won the game once the game's over. Quitter is an interesting one. If someone decides to quit the game, that will be the ID of the person who quit. If multiple people quit the game essentially simultaneously, to get the list of them, you have to set quitter to 0. So what you're going to want to do is to have an actor with a behavior on it, basically just looking at quitter. And if it's not 0, you're going to want to display a message saying so-and-so has quit the game, and then they want to set quitter to 0. And so once it gets set to 0, it will keep track and say, oh, well, someone else has quit the game, and set that to the new player's value, and then you could pop up another message saying so-and-so has quit the game. Update rate is very, very important. Plays together system is what we call a pull system, which means that the server basically just sits there. It never sends out data unless it's requested by the device the person is actually playing on. So update rate is how often the device requests data. So you basically want to set that as high as possible, and that's in seconds. So for instance, if it's 10, every 10 seconds, your game is going to go off to the server and say, give me the current state of the game. And then the server will send back all the data for the game. If you set that very fast, you're going to be flooded with network messages. So you basically want to set that as slow as possible so that your data stream doesn't get flooded, but fast enough so that your players aren't waiting a minute for updates. I would actually suggest to modify it depending on whether the person who's playing the game on the device is the current player or not. If the person is the current player, set it to a very low rate, because in general, the only messages that are going to be coming into the current player is if someone quits. Other than that, because this is a turn-based system, the current player won't be getting data from other players in general, because he's the one that's actually going to be modifying the game at the time. If you're not the current player, then you want to set it to a faster rate, because you want to keep saying, has the data changed, has the current player changed, and so you want to set it to a faster rate so that the person can find out sooner that they're the current player, for instance, or the game state has changed. So that's actually kind of important. Set it when the update rate is, or when the current player is the player ID, set it to like 30 seconds, something really slow. But if you're not the current player, then set it to maybe something like 5 or 10 seconds, so you get updates fairly frequently. Message from and message are used for the messaging system. You can make sort of like a chat system. However, we will not be going over that in this talk. Connected is basically just a flag that says the network is up. So if connected ever gets set to false, then your game has lost connection to the server, and you should basically pop up a message saying something's gone wrong, and take them back to the beginning of the game. Last error is an error code that is set when you make a network call and something goes wrong. We won't go over the particular values, but they should be on the website somewhere, I believe. On
which ones?
The error code, I believe, or they may be just in the initial post, but we should have them up somewhere. And the last server time is used. There's a behavior where you can ask the server what time it is, so you can have a common time between all your players, because you may have one player in. Does update go on while the game is off? No, we do not have push notifications or anything like that. So basically, once the player is not actually playing the game, they will not be getting any messages. So that is something we plan on adding in the future, but it's not exist right now. So on last server time, basically, that's where that value gets set, so that you can say, "Hey server, what time do you have?" And then when it returns, last server time will be set to whatever the server time is. And you essentially can't use that as a absolute value, but you can use it for relative value. So you call last server time, and it says 5, and then you call last server time again, and it says 10. You know that 5 seconds have passed since between the two calls. But you don't want to use it for an absolute time. So that's kind of the data. Now we are going to go to setting up your game. So generally, when you set up your game, you're going to be wanting to set up various tables. Some of the tables may be overwritten, and some of them may not. First of all, some things that you don't want to modify at all are the network player game data X tables. Those will be initialized in a different way. So basically, you just leave those alone. They'll be initialized essentially at runtime when the players are actually playing. You do not want to initialize network game instances. That gets initialized from the server when you request a list of games that are being played. And you don't want to update network achievements. That also gets updated by the server when you request achievement data. There are some things you do want to modify, and whether they get modified or, later or not depends on the game. But in general, you want to modify network game data and my network game table. So any tables that you personally create that you assign as game data tables. You can modify those, when you're creating your game to set up your initial game state when a new game is created. You can modify the player data tables, so the player data table that we create for you, and any ones that you create for yourself. You can modify those, although in general, all you want to do is set up the columns. Because what's going to happen is that when the player logs in, if any data exists on the server for those tables, they'll be updated from the server. And so they're really only useful for the initial state. And the other thing you're going to want to initialize is a table you create yourself, which I call my player initialization table here. This is basically going to be assigned to the network player game data X tables. so that, and we'll get to that, but what's going to happen is that the player will join the game for the first time, and my player initialization table will get copied to the network player game data underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that way you don't have to worry about, when my player joins, is he player 1 or player 5? And so which game data table do I have to initialize? We do that for you. So the first thing you're going to want to do as far as behaviors go in your game is called Network Connect. And you're going to want to do this with no parameters, or the top 3 parameters. Because what happens is that when a player connects to your game in the Play This Together system, assuming they connect successfully, that data gets cached on their device. And so if you call Network Connect with no data in there, it will use that cached data. So they don't have to continually enter in their name and their email and their password every time. You do have to enter in a value for the callback attribute, and as a matter of fact, one thing you'll notice is that every single network command or behavior has a field called callback attribute. This works exactly the same way as the callback attribute in the new IAP system, if you're familiar with that, or it works the same way as the callback attribute in the server commands that where you run your own server. For those that aren't familiar with those, the callback attribute is an integer attribute. When the command is run, that value gets set to 0. And because that network commands are asynchronous, all these commands are going to basically just run, send some data to the server, and then immediately return. So that unlike most of your rules, which actually execute, and when you say animate, it starts animating right there and then, these actually don't execute completely until sometime in the future. And this callback attribute is basically telling you whether they executed successfully or not. So what's going to happen is that Network Connect is going to be called in this instance, and you're going to have a callback attribute here. When this thing is first run, that callback attribute will be set to 0, and the server eventually will come back and say that connect succeeded or failed. And if it succeeded, that callback attribute will be set to 1, and if it failed, that callback attribute will be set to -1. So what you're going to want to do is you want to, for every callback attribute, you're going to want to have a rule that's looking at the value, and it says, if it's set to 1, then it succeeded, and I'm going to do things where successful things happen. If it's set to -1, then something went wrong, and I'm going to do things to handle errors. So for game start, in this initial state, with these blank name, email, and password fields, first of all, the callback attribute returns 1, then they've connected, everything's great, and you can just start going and start into your game. However, if it's -1, that's not necessarily a bad thing in this instance. Almost always, if callback attribute is -1, that means something bad happened. However, in this particular instance, not necessarily. What you want to do is look at game.networking.lastError. If that is less than or equal to -4, all that means is that they haven't logged in before. So that you need to basically take them to a login screen so that they can log in for the first time. If last error is greater than -4, that does mean something bad has happened. In general, it can't communicate with the server. In that case, you're just going to have to pop up a message saying, unable to communicate with server. If you have some sort of offline mode for your game, you can take them to there, or you'll just have to say, try again later. And also, in general, if something is wrong with the server, you should contact us because probably the server's gone down or we need to look at something. In general, the server should always be up. Although, as we saw last week, or this week, that's not always the case. So now we can go to the login screen. And here, in the login screen, you're going to ask them for 3 pieces of data. You're going to ask your user for their player name, their player email, and player password, and you're going to call Network Connect again, but with that data in these fields. One thing that's set out that's actually very important for the Plays Together system is that players are identified individually by their email, not their name. So if they would log in with the same email but a different name, that's the same player as far as our system is concerned. Which means that you may be playing with Alan one day, and he may log off and log back in with the same email, but now call himself Steve, and all of a sudden you're playing with Steve. And unfortunately, that's kind of just the way the system works, so that you don't necessarily want to make any data on your game associated with the player name. You can display the player name, but you don't want to ever have in your system where you cache off that name and then you compare it to something, because that name could change. Player's one name could change from one session to the next. Player password. One thing to note here is that currently we do have a command that lets the player change their password, but we don't have any way to let them recover their password if they forget it. We will be adding that in the future. However, currently, if the player forgets their password, they're going to effectively have to log in with a new email. Another thing to note is that we do not validate this email. We just use this as an identifier. So, the players, when they enter in their email, they're never going to get an email message from us saying, verify your login to this game or anything like that. We use it strictly as an identifier. So once you call Network Connect with the player's data, what about the username and forgot password? Is that pointless? Currently, yes, it is pointless. If the user forgets their password, currently there is no way to recover it. We will be adding that in the future, but at the moment we can't. So if the callback attribute for Network Connect, when you actually pass in data, returns -1. Some useful information on last error might be -3, which is no server, which basically means that the server's gone down for some reason. If it's -4, you can pop a message saying bad password. -4 basically means that they've logged in with this email before, but they logged in with a different password. And so you can say, wrong password, please enter it again, that kind of thing. In general, you should never get -5, because that basically means that they didn't enter in data. And in general, before you call Network Connect with the name, email, and password, you should verify that there's actually data in those fields. But if you don't, and they just say, log in, and they don't enter in any data, you'll get back a -5 on last error. Assuming there's a successful network connection, what's going to happen is that the server is going to send that player a bunch of data. And that data is going to be going into the network player data table, any network player tables that you create for your own game, and the network achievement table. So as soon as they log in, before they even connect to a game or start playing or anything, they're going to get their own personal data that's not game dependent, and they're going to get a list of all the achievements that they've successfully made. Although again, we're not going to go into how the achievements work. So in general, after you log in, what you want to do is you want to get the games that are being played. You either want to get the games the player is currently playing, so they can go in and continue playing a particular game, or you're going to want to get a list of games that are waiting for players to join the game. And here's how you do that. There's a command called network get games, And you can use this for other things. For instance, you can use it to get the games that a player has finished. But we're just going to be going to kind of the general, the most used features of this function. So if you want to get a list of the player's current game, you want to make sure that 4-player, and I didn't realize this was kind of small on the slide, but once we post them, you'll be able to magnify it and see it better. You want to make sure that 4-player is set to the current player's ID, which is game.networking.player_ID. That will make sure that any games listed will be for the current player. You're going to want to make sure that you set the in progress tick, and you may want to set the waiting for players box. Waiting for players basically means that the game isn't running, but it's still waiting for players. That's kind of up to you, and you definitely want to set the in progress part, however. So that will make sure that he'll get the games that he's currently playing. If you want to just get a list of open games, you want to leave the 4-player blank, and you want to have the waiting for players box ticked, and the in progress option unticked, and that will get a list of games that are just waiting for other players to join. Other fields that are important: max games is going to be the max number of games that are returned. So, for instance, if you put in 1,000, and there are 1,000 games out there waiting to be played, you're going to get a ton of data, and that's going to be slow. So you kind of have to decide, how big of a weight, and you're probably going to have to, just test this empirically, but how big of a weight are you willing to have to load in games? And plus, you're going to have to show all those, so that's going to take a bunch of time too to set up the display for all those. But we do give you the option of choosing how many games max you want to receive. Now, of course, if there's less than that, we'll just send you whatever we got. So, if only 5 people currently have games that are still waiting for players to join, then we'll just send you 5, even though you requested 10. The other 2 fields that are important are the game type and the game subtype. These are just arbitrary strings, but what happens is when a game gets created, you set a game type and a game subtype string. And you want to have, if you want to filter based on those values, then you can set those in game subtype in network get games. So for instance, if let's say I've got my games set up like based on ranking. So I have expert games and normal games and easy games. I can set up my game type as expert, normal, or easy. And then when I filter those, I could ask my player, do you want to get a list of expert games or easy games or normal games? And I can set that in the game type, and then you'll only get a list of those particular games. So that way you have filters that you can use. And we have 2 different filters, as I said. There's subtype. Again, these are totally arbitrary, don't have anything to do with anything you've set up. As far as on the Place Together website, doesn't have to match your game name. They're just arbitrary strings, but we can use these as matching values to filter the list of games that you receive, so you don't just get flooded out. There is one caveat note, and that's very important when getting open games, in that we can't exclude based on player ID, which means that if you get open games, it may return games that the player currently is playing that are still waiting. So what you're going to have to do when showing the list of games is basically go through and say, is the current player playing this game? Is he on the player list? And if he is, then you might want to filter that out or color it in a different color or something like that, so he doesn't join a game he's currently playing. So that's something I'd like to fix in the future, although there are currently no plans for it, but something to keep in mind. So once these commands are run, and assuming the callback is one, the server is going to fill in the network game instances table with all the games that match the criteria that you set up in the network games behavior. This again is another slide that's going to be maybe kind of hard to see on your screen. You can magnify it once we post the slide. But this is the network game instances table. As you can see, it's just got a ton of data, and this isn't even all the data on here. This is only showing the data for the base data and the first 2 players. So there's other fields for the other 6 players here as well. But basically, this is just for every row here is a game that's been created. And the most important thing really about this is the leftmost column, which is the game instance ID. Every game that gets created is assigned an ID. And that ID uniquely identifies that game. And you're going to be passing that ID around to a lot of the behavior so that it knows that, hey, I'm talking about this particular game that's being played and not that game over there that's being played. I'm not really going to go over the data for the rest of them. But I will want to note that there is a known bug on the player name _1, player name _2, etc., in that the name for the player that is using the device is correct. It will give that player's name that he connected with. However, other players, it will simply say user 1, user 2, user 3, etc. That is a known bug that we will be fixing in the future before we officially release this. So, so that's that table. So if there are no games at all, the player is obviously going to want to create a game for themselves. And you use that with the network create game behavior. It's got several fields, 2 of which we've already talked about, the game type and game subtype. Again, these are arbitrary strings, and they're strictly used for matchmaking when you request games. So it doesn't matter what you put in there. It won't be used for anything unless you decide to use it. If the game subtype is important to your game, to maybe set the difficulty level or whatever, you can you look at that field. But other than that, as far as we're concerned, it's just basically a string that we pass around. The important thing to note is max players. That can be a number from 1 to 8. Admittedly, a 1-player multiplayer game is a little weird, but it's technically doable. However, one thing to note is that for max players, for a game to be started, all those players have to have joined the game. So you can't have a game that you said max players is 4, and 2 people have joined the game and have those 2 people play. You can't join ad hoc. You have to have all the players join before the game can be started. So keep that in mind, is that you set up an 8-player game, whoever creates the game is going to have to wait around for 7 other people to join before the game can even get started. Just keep that in mind, and for when you're designing your game. The other field that's very important for this is the initialization table. You're going to set that with a table. It can be any table that's available that you created. And that table, when this command is run and it's run successfully, is going to be copied into network player game data _x. So if the person creating the game is almost always player 1. So in general, that will be copied into network player game data _1. There may be times, there's no guarantee, however, of that. So you don't want to actually set data directly into network player game data _1 for the creator. Set it up in an initialization table. Set that table in the expression or the attribute for the initialization table, and we'll copy that for you into the correct table. And then once that gets done, that data gets sent to the server so that the server now can send that data to other players, so the other players will be able to see that data. But that's very important, is that do not directly initialize network player game data underscore X. Now, of course, if you don't want to have any data per player, then you can leave this blank, and nothing will get initialized, and it will effectively be ignored. You know, leaving it blank is a valid thing. So once a person has created a game, other people are going to want to join it. And join is actually used for two different things. Join is used for, you created a game and I want to join your game so I can play. But join is also used for, I've been playing a game and I've turned off my device and now I've come back in and I want to continue playing this game. You also have to call join in that situation. So join is called when you're joining a game for the first time, and every time you come back into the game once you've left and want to continue playing that. So you're going to want to call it every time that the player starts up. You're going to want to pass in, whoops, stupid thing. You're going to want to pass in the game ID of the game being joined. And you're going to want to, again, with the other one, with the create one, pass in an initialization table. This is only used if the player is joining a new game. If it turns out that you called join game for a player that the game has joined previously, then the initialization table field will simply be ignored because that their network player game data underscore X table has already been initialized, and so we actually want to get that data from the server and not from your initialization table. And that's actually what we see here. On a successful join from the server, a bunch of data is going to come in for that player. They're going to get the network game data, which is the global data for the particular game. They're going to get any game tables that you created that are flagged as network game tables. And they're going to get all the network player game data X tables. So they'll be able to see the individual data for all the players that are currently in the game. Now, assuming that the network join game callback attribute returns 1, you've got some decisions to make. There's basically four things that can happen, assuming that a game is joined successfully. You're going to want to look at the attributes for the game, and you're going to see, is the game started attribute set? If it's not set, you need to see, is the player count equal to the maximum number of players for the game? If it's not, then you need to wait for more players to join the game until all the players are joined. So you're going to need to pop up a message to the user saying, waiting for X number of players, please be patient, or come back later until the number of players is joined. Again, currently we do not have push notifications. So if you have a 4-player game and player number 2 is joined and they don't feel like waiting around, they're just going to have to come back later and see, have enough people join the game yet. And again, hopefully we'll be able to get push notifications in the next few months, and so that way they'll get a notification saying, hey, everybody's joined the game, and now the game can go on. If the player count is equal to the max number of players for the game, then you are going to want to start the game up, and we'll get to that in a second. If you've just the game started flag, and the game has started, we've still got two different options. Is the current player my player? If it is, then have the player take his turn. The player should be able to modify the game, however, move his piece, roll the dice, whatever. If the current player is not my player, simply show the player state, but don't let the player actually input any data or try to change the state, because what's going to happen is that periodically his game is going to go out and request the game data, and it's going to update the game data from the server. There's actually a bug, a known bug, where the current player who's taking their turn also gets overwritten. And again, That's a known bug that will be fixed soon. But that's not supposed to happen, so yay for that. So kind of the two big things are, if the game is started and the players count equals the max number of players, you're going to want to start the game. If the game has started and the current player is 5 player, you're going to want the player to take his turn. Those are the two big things. And then otherwise you're going to want to just simply show the game state, or simply tell the player that not all the players have joined the game yet, and they have to wait. So, if the game hasn't started, but the number of players equals the max number of players, you're going to go on and call it the start game here. Now, technically, the final person that joined the game doesn't have to call start game. It could be you could wait and have the creator join the game, and if he sees the number of players equals the max number of players, he'll start the game. But in general, it's best to start the game as soon as possible, so that if it's a 4-player game and player 4 joins, the game starts right off the bat. And it's a smoother game flow that way. But again, it's not technically necessary. However, to start this game, the player must have successfully called join game. So if you want the creator of the game to be the one to start the game, and he's created the game, logged off, logged back on again at a later point, you need to make sure that even though he's the creator, he still has to call join game, say that yes, this is the game that I'm interested in using, and then he can call start game. But in general, the last player to do it, it's an easier flow. So all you have to do there is simply enter in the ID of the first player. You can be the person that just last joined the game, and that's also a smoother flow, so that the person that last joined the game can immediately take their turn. But if you want to make it so that the creator is always the first player to go, then you can put in the creator's ID. Or if you want to make it random, you can get a list of the player IDs from the game instance table, and pick a random one and stick that in there. One thing to note is that if callback attribute returns -1 and last error is -8, that means the player has not joined. So in theory, you should never see this. You should never have -8 as the last error. But if you do, that's what that means. And what's going to happen on network start game is the network game data table and any network game tables that you personally create will immediately be sent to the server. So whoever calls the start game should have those tables set up for them. So you can have it set up, statically when you actually create the game in Creator, or you can set it dynamically so that when the last player joins, you dynamically add data to game data and to any tables that you create, and then call start game. But those will be sent to the server initially, and then those tables will then be sent to any other players that are currently in the game. So once a player has started the game, current player will be set to whoever the current player is, and that player will be able to take their turn. You're going to let them roll dice or move pieces or make attacks or whatever, and you're going to be modifying various data tables. There are some tables you should not modify. The network player game data _ X tables for other players, do not modify those, because those will be overwritten by receiving data. So do not modify those. That data will never get sent to the server, and it will basically be overwritten periodically. Do not modify network game instances or network game achievements. Basically, never modify network game instances and network achievements at all. Those two tables are always filled in with data from the server. However, you can modify any of the other network tables. So you can modify the global game data table. You can modify any of your own personal game data tables. You can modify the network player game data table for the player whose current turn it is. And of course, you can modify the network player data table that's global to the player, not for a particular game that they're currently playing, but just their global data. Now, as I said, you can modify network player game data for my current player. How do I do that? As I showed earlier, there's a new function called network player table for ID, and you just put in game.networking.player ID, and that's the current player. So if you need to, set a cell and the set cell function, you'll pass this in as the table. If you want to get cell, again, you'll pass this in to that behavior to get that data. If you want to get the data for the current player, you want to have some other player see what the current player's state is, then you can use game networking current player in that function. And if you want to just get an arbitrary player, you can basically do a double function where you call network player table for ID and pass into that network player ID for number and then the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so you can use all these three functions as a substitute for a table in any place where you would need to enter in a table. Once the current player has gotten done with his particular turn, you need to pass that turn on to the next player, and you do that by calling end turn. And you simply pass in the player ID of the player whose next turn it is. You want to go in however you determine the player order, random or whatever. You pass in that ID, and that once this function executes, that player will be the current player. And again, once this function executes successfully, some of the tables on the current player's device will be sent to the server. So the network game data table on his device, and your personal network tables, and the network player game data for that player will all be sent to the server, and then all that will be updated on other players' devices. So basically what that means is that while a player is taking his turn, other players won't be able to see the update. So if your game allows the player to do multiple things in one turn, the other players won't be able to see the results of that until they've done all those things and you've called end turn. That's very important to note. So in a game like, let's say, Words for Friends, it doesn't matter because you play a tile and that's all you do. So you play a tile, you hit end turn, and the other player sees what tile you played. But if you, for instance, roll dice and make a move, the other players won't be able to see what dice value were rolled until you've actually called end turn and also sent the move itself. So you can't have multiple pieces of data updating independently of each other. You've got to send the player's entire turn as one set of data. So that's important to note when designing your game. And that's actually kind of the entire loop. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to call network end turn. Somebody is going to get an update saying that current player is now my player ID, so then they take their turn, and then the next player takes their turn and calls end turn, and so on and so on and so forth, until somebody wins the game. And in that case, you'll call network end game and set the winner, and the game will be over. So these are kind of the other commands. I'm just going to go over these very quickly and not in any particular detail. So network end game, again, all you do is just it's called when the game is over. You set the winner of the game, and then the players know who won the game. Network leave game is called. It's kind of an optional function. You don't necessarily need to call it, but it's a kind of basically it's kind of a convenience function. If that you have multiple people playing and they're all online, and one of them decides to go out and do other things, you can call network leave game just to notify other players that, hey, this guy is offline. But it doesn't actually cause them to quit or anything like that. You can also call network leave game. Oh, never mind. That's a network. So that's kind of if they want to, like, for instance, leave the game and join another game, you can call a network leave game to do that. So, for instance, if I'm playing multiple instances of Word for Friends, I can go and make a move on one game, then have it so it'll call leave game and then join another particular game. Network quit game is called, you can call that if the player literally just simply says, I don't want to play this game anymore, and you can have call quit game and send the player ID. And once that happens, even though you can't start a game until all players are joined, when a player quits the game, you can still play the game with less players. So, for instance, if you have a 4-player game, all 4 players have to join the game before the game starts, but then if one of them quits and your game can handle it, the other 3 players could still potentially continue playing the game. However, no one will be able to join as the 4th player. So you can't have one person leave a game and another person then join in as a substitute for that player.
There's a question that's going on in the scroll. If I exit the app, will I, the player, count as a quitter?
No. No. Exiting out is the equivalent of leaving the game. It is not quitting the game. Network persist player. I've talked about the data tables that are assigned to the player globally, the player data table that aren't associated with any particular instance of a game. I showed how those were loaded in when the player first connects to the network, but I never said anything about how you actually send that data to the server. That's the network persist player function. So you call that, and those global tables are sent to the server to be stored, so that the next time the player connects to the server, they'll get that data back. Network send message sends a message, just a text string to another player. You can use that to send arbitrary data, or you could use it to make a little chat system for your game. However you want to use it, it's there. Network delete game is used to remove a game from the system. One thing, it can be used to delete a game in progress, which admittedly is kind of rude, but nevertheless we allow you to do it. Or it can delete a game that's finished. One thing to note is that when a game ends, that game data sticks around essentially forever, unless we decide to delete it on the server, but which ideally we should never do unless we just totally run out of data. However, if the player that created the game ends, the player that created the game has the option of deleting the game, and which will delete all its data as well. Note that only the creator of a particular instance of a game can delete that game. So if even though someone else might be playing the game, if they call delete game, the callback will return -1 because they aren't the creator of the game. Network change password is the one we talked about in the beginning. If a user logs in and decides they don't like their password, they can change it, but they can't recover it. And hopefully we'll get that fixed at some point in the future. Network get server time is that attribute that we talked about earlier, so you can get a consistent time between players. But again, that's mainly used to determine delta times, so that you can say, this player has been playing his turn for 60 seconds, and maybe you want to assign a penalty to that. Because if we didn't have the server time, they could potentially go in and just set their clock back, and then all of a sudden when you check the local time, it would say the same time as the last time you checked it, even though, a minute had passed. So you can use kind of network server time to prevent not total cheating, but potentially a little cheating there. So you can make sure that you say, you must make your turn within 1 minute. You can verify the 1 minute's cast. Network update achievements is to assign players to it for a particular achievement, but we're not going to do it. We're not talking about achievements in this talk. Network disconnect is an interesting one. So network disconnect basically not only is the equivalent of calling leave game, but it's also removes the cache data from their login. So as I said earlier, when you first start your game, you want to call connect with no data, so it will use the cache data so that they don't have to re-enter their name and email and password every time they want to play your game. Network disconnect basically gets rid of that cache. It deletes it, so that next time they play, they do have to enter in their name and their email and their password. In general, the only time you want to call network disconnect is if a player is going to want to give his device to some other person and doesn't want that person logging in as them, and so you want to call disconnect to make sure that the other person can't auto log in as the other player, or if they want to just pass their device and have some other player log in, because you may want this, depending on how you set up your game, you may have it set up so that if the auto login succeeds, you may not give them the option to manually log in. So network disconnect could be used for that as well. But basically, yeah, that just deletes the internal cache of their login data so that the next time they run your game, they must re-enter in their login data. And that is actually the end of the talk. I know it's been a lot of information coming in fairly quickly. Hopefully, most of it made sense. If not, we'll be posting, when we do the official release of the Place Together stuff, we'll be posting a detailed information about all these commands and all the data that goes along with it. And of course, we'll be posting these slides and an audio log of the talk as well. So hopefully you can just go re-listen to it and re-look at the slides and kind of get your head around it. So any final questions?
Yeah, we'll get the link to the slides. Probably more the video. We'll find some way to get the slides up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to ask an audio question, go ahead and raise your hand. Let's start with questions about this, and then we'll start answering questions about more general things.
Yeah. Any questions about the networking first?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about IF and whatnot.
Yeah. Start with that first. Hand raising or just post a question. Oh, we got one here. Hold on a second, Peter. I'll get you on here.
There's another question.
All right.
An updated guide of new IAP.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll answer that in a second.
Oh, you're right.
Okay. Let Peter on the phone. Can you hear us, Peter?
Okay, so right before the webinar started, I was on the forum and it said the Place Together website was back up, so I went and made an account, and then I tried logging in, and I had my correct password and my correct email that Chrome had saved already, and it was saying an error.
Yeah, so we know that right now there's currently a problem with it creating accounts. I'm trying to get someone to fix that. I've been trying to get someone to fix it this week. We're working on it. We'll try to get that fixed as soon as I can.
That's great. That's fine.
Yeah, the system is still buggy, and we're still working on it.
Yeah, because realize we acquired the company, we have their technology, but we haven't had a chance to fully, we only got access to it recently, so we haven't had a chance to fully dive in and get all the pieces.
Yeah.
But we will be updating it. It's in our plans to actually start taking more control over where that goes and getting the system go.
Yeah, not only do we plan on, or at least hopefully, not only do we plan on fixing all the bugs that we know about, we also want to add more functionality to it. For instance, I noted earlier that when you're requesting games, you can't exclude a player so that he doesn't get his own game staff. That's something we want to add. We want to add things like a friends list, so that you can get the games your friends are playing and join those games instead of just getting random games. So things like that. So we will be adding new features and fixing bugs as the year goes on.
And remember, we just still have this all, like, we only have this in the nightly build because, again, there are bugs and we're still working them out. We'll get this all ironed out for the final release. We thought we'd give you guys a preview of how this works so you guys can start diving in and start building games. Remember, some of these behaviors also work for the non-plays-together system as well.
Yeah, I should note that there's nothing preventing you from using both systems together. So I noted that at the beginning that no code was run on the server side, so that if you wanted to do any, for instance, cheat detection, that would have to be done on the device itself, which isn't the most secure thing in the world. But there's nothing preventing you from running your own server and using this simultaneously. So that is a potential option, is to use this and then run your own server as a cheat detector.
Okay, let me go through a couple more here we got. Okay, so I have stuff. So interesting enough, the next meetup in February, hope I get this right, I believe it's Armeline on the forums is actually going to go through a really in-depth presentation about how to use the new IF system for doing things like having a button that shows state of that purchase and a bunch of advanced features with that. So they're going to do that presentation next month. So that would be the best RSs come back next month to meet up and watch that presentation, and they'll be able to answer probably more of those questions. Of course, we'll be here to supplement any of those as well.
Yeah. Although we should have documentation.
We have on Cookbook. We have pretty up-to-date information on how to do IF purchase across all the app stores that we support, and a pretty good walkthrough it. I don't know if we have any video tutorials, but we have a really good write-up on Cookbook.
When should we actually build multiplayer games? Well, technically you can build them right now. However, there are some known bugs that are preventing you from successfully running them.
Yeah, and if you guys have bugs that we don't know about, please put them in the database so I can start getting people assigned to them and get them fixed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not familiar with all the bugs, and I can go get someone assigned to fix bugs that completely break the system.
Yeah.
So please send me message me on the forums with, hey, I entered this at Bugzilla, here's the bug number, and I'll try to get someone assigned to fix that.
Yeah. Can you just play together as just a way to create a save game process across devices and game table like iCloud Sync? Technically, yes. Potentially, as I said, you can create a multiplayer game with one player. And just use that to save the player's state on the server. So yes, you can do that. However, remember that the player does have to log in, so it's going to be a little weird for your player to get a message saying, "Please give us a name and email and password to play this single-player game." You might want to put an explanation saying, your data, we will use this data to save your data on the network so you can go somewhere else and then grab that data. So yeah, you can be, but watch out because you're going to have to log in and it's going to feel weird to your player.
Peter mentioned again after GameStyle Guru actually has a video, which is actually in our cookbook page. So if you go to the cookbook page for app purchase, you can see his video there. Welcome, RS. All right, well, I'll take care of that problem. RS says that something's not up to date. RS, send me a message what's not up to date, and I'll get it updated. I'm not sure what that refers to. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
So most pages should be updated. There are a few menu bars that are different. What's happening is we've updated our style, but we haven't completed rolling out all the sites with the updated style.
Here's the next question. Does Android, Kindle work to Plays Together or just Google? Plays Together is universal. It works on iOS, it works on Android, it works on Mac, and when we get the Windows together, it will work on Windows. It is cross-platform. So you can have a player on an Android device playing with someone on an iOS device.
Does it have are we going to do anything does it have HTML at all? You know, no, okay.
It just doesn't use, that's a separate thing.
Okay.
So yes, this is multi-platform. So you can have you can advertise your advertise your game as being cross-platform, multiplayer cross-platform, if you'd like.
Okay, one second, RS, to make sure there's no other questions. Okay, all right, okay, RS, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't know if this was already covered, but is it possible to connect your own server to check on the Plays Together server? Like if you want to run through a table to see if someone's cheating, for example?
Not directly. You can't communicate directly from your own server to the Plays Together server. What you can do is you can send the network tables to your server and then have your server verify them and send some sort of data back, saying, you know, these tables look good or not.
Okay.
However, there is no, we don't allow direct communication with the Plays Together servers.
So I'd kind of point out by that point, if you're writing servers that are checking other servers, you probably want your game to host. You might be able to write the whole game yourself at that point.
Yeah.
But ideally, though, you could ideally send the data, pre-send the data to a server, validate it, and then send the data to the Plays Together server.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, what you can do is you can say, you know, the player's taking his turn. You send the data to your own server. Your server returns back that says, yes, this looks good, and then then you call intern, which will then update Plays Together.
Did that answer your question, RS?
Definitely.
Okay. Sorry, I'm doing two things. Any other questions we have? Or I guess we're all... Have we got any more questions on the networking? Nope, got our hand raised for Peter. Oh, is Peter want a hand raised or not? Raise your hand again, Peter, if you want me to unmute you. It's not having problems. Okay, one second, Peter. Okay, go ahead, Peter. Can you hear us?
I had a question about, yes.
Okay.
I had a question about something else, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Should I ask it anyway? Okay. So, concerning the Android and Android viewer, the Android viewer is like really buggy. I think I already put a bug report with most of the stuff, and then I actually published my game to Android and noticed that a lot of the bugs also were on the Android after it's been published. So I can add that to the bug report too. I just wonder if you were aware of those.
I have a lot of bugs I'm juggling, so sometimes they kind of fall in there. QA is probably aware of it, and she probably hasn't brought it to our attention, but feel free to hit me up, like send me a message on the forums. Hey, I've got the following bugs. You know, what's going on with these, and we'll try to put something in there. But yeah, please put any information you have on that. Like, these happen in production, and we'll look into that. Is that on the 12, or is that on the, which version of Creator?
12.10, I think.
12.10, okay. Yeah, send us...
whatever the newest version for, like, everybody is.
Yeah, it's 12. Yeah, go ahead and just send me a message with what the bug numbers. Just send me links from things to the bug in the Bugzilla public database, and I'll take a look at this.
Okay. One more thing. Is it intentional that the engine for the arcade is extremely better than any other engine?
Wait, what?
Say that again?
I don't know. Okay.
I've seen the
So
reverse.
when I run my game on the arcade, it runs like super fast, and if I have like a certain amount of particles, it's actually spawning every single one. Whereas if I like publish it to Mac and play it on the same computer, it's not showing all the particles and it's running slower. So is that just an engine you haven't rolled out to that platform yet? All the platforms?
No, that's actually kind of news to us because usually the arcade engine is usually less performant and a bit behind. So there's something odd you're doing for the game that the arcade engine happens to be handling well. You might want to send us the game because we've never seen that before, and it'd be really interesting to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It runs slower on, like, I exported to Mac. It runs slower on Mac than it does on the arcade on the same computer.
Yeah, that is exceptionally unusual.
Okay. Yes. Okay. One more last thing. So I got the free month of Pro through the Game Jams, and I was considering buying Pro, but then Graphene, you guys announced that. I don't know if you guys want to go too in depth, but is this something that I should wait and purchase that instead if I'm interested, or should I still get Pro now? Like, from a buying standpoint, not from like you make money standpoint.
We're not. We don't have any information on the prices of graphene right now. So if Pro works for what you need to do, I'd say go with that.
Yeah.
Don't wait for future products. If it works what you need to do, can work what we have, I'd say go for it.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to. Do you want to help field some questions there, Ken? Or do you want to unmute people? I haven't had a chance. I know there's more questions.
Will Place Together be available in graphene? It's not implemented in graphene yet, but we're saying yes.
It could be, yeah.
Assume yes until it's basically you should assume that any of the things that are in any of the features that are in gamesalad, so iApp or multiplayer or whatever, will also be in graphene.
But maybe not in the exact form they are.
No, it's certainly not in the exact form, but the functionality will be there.
Yeah, I already did.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Right.
So, all right. So go ahead and ask whatever question you guys want to ask now. I think we've gone through all the networking stuff. We can field some graphene questions or whatever you guys want. I'm open to whatever questions. Okay, 1 second. And if you want to be unmuted, please raise your hand. It's easier for me that way. Okay.
Controller support done yet?
Hold on, I'm going to answer that question in a second. All right, go ahead, RS. RS, are you there?
I don't have a question now. I might.
Okay. Controller support. I'm still working on it. I just figured out how to fix one of the problems I was having with Android during the Christmas break. Because Android build system is really screwy and makes me want to pull my hair out every time I use it. But I'm almost done with it. So I should have hopefully that done soon, and then on to iOS. So I'll hopefully have more information soon, but it probably won't be, it'll probably still at least a month out or more before I have anything really solid. I'll see if I can get you guys some type of demo or something just to play around with it. But I won't have anything inside gamesalad for a while. I'm still fleshing out the technology, and like I said, I'm doing it on my free time, so it's every time I have at home to do it. So it's a lot more slow going than we normally have. But if you have programming skills, you can help us out. It's open source. You can add into it. If somebody wants to take up the mantle and do iOS support or Windows or something like that or whatnot, the code is there for you to add to. Or if you want to help fix bugs and test it, I can. That's always helpful too. Where is it? It is on, if you go to Bitbucket, let me try and find a place to do this. If you go to Bitbucket and look for FreeStick, that is the easiest way to go. There's also, if you look in the forums, there's a joystick thread, and the thread has a link to the repository. But if you go look at Bitbucket and look up my name, Alan Yu, or if you just look up FreeStick on Bitbucket, you'll find the repository there. All right, I'll say I'm going to move so I can read this question.
Basically, it's asking, are we going to stop making editor features? My answer for that is that if there's an editor feature you want, make a feature request on Bugzilla. And if lots of people vote for it, we will add it.
Yeah, I'm still planning to put features into Creator this entire year.
We have not stopped developing Creator just because graphing is going on. So, you know, we're currently working on Windows 12, and then we will be working on Windows 13 and Mac 13 as a release. And then we will be going down that list of feature requests that are on Bugzilla and what people look at, what people have voted for. And if people, you know, everybody wants, you know, snap to grids on Mac Creator, we'll implement it.
Yeah. So we as you saw, we already know, Steve and I already know we're going to be doing RevMob, like.
No, not RevMob.
AdMob. I'm sorry, I get this confused. AdMob. Sorry, you guys vote for AdMob. #1 vote. So in 14, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
That's the next feature, 14.
Yeah. So if you want to, if you want features added to Mac Creator or Windows Creator for that matter, add something to Bugzilla and get people to vote for it.
Yep. And we're just going to list now some things may be out of our control, and some things may not fit into gamesalad. I'm still going back and forth. I know some people have asked for scripting in gamesalad. I'm not sure if that's where that should go. Gamesalad isn't really designed for that. So some of those things we may kind of skip on, or those may be better for graphene. But right now, my plan is just go straight down that list and start implementing. And the first thing, like I said, we have that one feature up top, and 14 has no features in it right now, and that's the next feature going on to 14 after we clearly get through 12 and 13.
Right.
Can you post Gamesalad games to graphene? So I don't have any details on that. The idea, though, is right now we don't have any plans to support your Gamesalad games going directly into graphene. Now, is it a possibility that something could be made to have that working? Sure, but the design is not to be a one-to-one system.
Yeah, I think so this could be completely wrong because I'm not actually working on the graphene project, but from what little I understand, there's a chance we'll build like some kind of converter that will convert your project to graphene equivalent.
Yes,
but it's a different engine.
Yeah.
So we can't guarantee it will work the same. It'll just have the same behavior-ish.
Yeah. If we do any sort of conversion, it's likely it will only be Gamesalad to graphene and not the other way around.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just two different engines. So there are concepts that just don't exist on the graphene engine. So,
or vice versa.
Or vice versa, yeah, completely. There's definitely concepts in graphene that do not exist in Gamesalad.
Yeah.
So we have done tests, like we did a small test to port a small game over, so I know it's possible. But again, large games and very complex games, there's a very good chance you could be doing something that just doesn't support it in graphene.
Yeah. We've been asking better information for years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, we spent most of last year fixing bugs. And I know it sucks if we haven't had a chance to do a lot of new features. But last year was a lot of bug fixing. This year we're starting new features going forward. So go vote. If you guys have some editor improvements you really, 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 really want, push them up the voting list and we'll put them in.
And there's always like new platforms or new OSs that we have to take priority.
Yeah.
We have problems with Apple changes all their rules. They have to go in and re-implement. We are having to re-implement some of the things for the iOS version of Creator because Apple says that everything has to have a 64-bit binary, and so we're having to take some time out of scheduled work to do that.
Yeah. Oh, and also the thing came up with Apple rejecting because
Apple's rejecting documents because they're saving data in the wrong place for them. And
so
there's things that are out of our control.
Yeah, and same thing with Yosemite's memory. And Yosemite has got memory issues, and it's doing weird things now. I spent, I think, 3 weeks just going through and improving memory usage of that. So things happen, and we just kind of have to
push things back. Yeah,
push and roll with the punches. So we're trying the best we can to get through things. Steve's been continuously working on the Windows Creator to get that up to par, and I've been trying to get the Mac to stay as good as it can. But also remember, we have to drop things sometimes because we actually deal with all three apps marketplaces, Android or Amazon's, Google's, and Apple. And now that Google and Amazon are starting to get more tough on things, sometimes I have to drop things and fix these.
Yeah.
So, but we're trying the best we can. I have no timetables for graphene.
Yes.
Absolutely none. Don't know anything. If you want to get sooner, go sign up for the beta.
Yeah. Is there a plan for a cross-platform for GameSalad? Not for GameSalad.
No, not for GameSalad.
Well, okay. So I get it depends what you mean, Scott. If you mean, can you take a GameSalad game that you created on Mac and use it on Windows? Yes, that is actually what I've been working on, and make sure that Windows is usable for any Mac game. If you mean a standard user interface for both, that's what graphene is.
Yeah, like we're not going to make GameSalad work like on Linux or iPad.
Yeah.
But if you want to go between Mac and Windows, GameSalad, sure, that's definitely that will be supported in 12.
Yes, that's kind of the big update for Windows 12 is that it will be fully functional with Mac phone.
Yep. Go vote for the feature request, and we will improve what we can. We're not going to do full overhauls though.
Yes.
I'm happy though to fix things like I've been wanting to put Zoom in for a long time into the scene editor. I want to do that for a long time, and I know there's lots of other tweaks we want to do. some things that are hard to do on gamesalad, like multi-select, is actually really tough to fix. So those things may be a little hard for us to change. But if everybody wants that feature, I have no problem putting it in. That's why we have a lovely voting system. I don't have control. Okay, so we're talking about the forum posts. So I've been letting that to CodeWizard, and I'm letting. I don't really have control over what we post. We're pretty tight-lipped. There's only so much we can talk to the public about that kind of stuff. So I'll see if I can get CodeWizard to give a little better updates, but I wasn't the one deciding what should be announced. But I said that's why we have kind of these meetups to help. We can help facilitate some of that stuff. If you guys.
We'll pass on your concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of rundown on what you would use C++, Java to do? We don't even have. I can't. So he wants to know what language is basically what you'd use in graphene. Right now, I don't have an answer for that. We're still figuring that out ourselves.
Yeah.
Please finish multiplayer.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, unfortunately the Plays Together system was down this week, but I had hoped to have a demo and fix several of the known multiplayer bugs. I should be getting to that sometime next week, hopefully.
Scott, I can't really talk about the details of graphene in that situation. Anyway, can we talk about? Can we talk about any of that, Dan?
No, it's one of the things I think we'd like to, but it's because graphene is still in development. Some of the details are actually in flux. So
yeah,
rather than give you more
speculation,
bad information.
Yeah, I say science and beta if you want to find out. So again, Peter asked, will graphene be direct competition to DD engines such as graphene and Unity 2D? Again, we can't talk about.
Well, it depends. I mean, technically, gamesalad is a direct competitor to Unity 2D. So it kind of depends on what you mean. Yes, it will be a competitor. It will be a competitor to Unreal Engine as well.
Yeah.
And any other third-party engine. So
just as much as graphene is, or just as much as gamesalad is.
Just as much as gamesalad is, yeah. No.
Nope. You can go sign up for the beta now.
Again, no timetable for graphene. Sorry. It needs push notifications to complete multiplayer. Yes, Plays Together actually has its own push notification system. We just haven't integrated it into gamesalad, which we will be doing hopefully before 13 comes out, but if not, that will be one of the things probably in 14. Can't talk about games? Sorry. Why not graphene or not?
We can give you a top secret sneak preview. Go to our Facebook page. That logo on the Facebook page, that's going to be the logo.
Yeah. Why announce graphene if you're not willing to answer community questions on it? Talk to our bosses.
Do you want to take field that, Dan?
Well, so the general idea is we're announcing graphene because we want to start getting the pool of people that we're going to get to test it going, and we'll be releasing it slowly among the people that have signed up for it to build interest. And that's a lot of it. And also so this is probably going to open a can of worms, but part of the idea is like start putting in feature requests, because the feature requests will, right now we're saying they're all gamesalad. Like they may also influence how graphene goes in the future too. So it's really good. It's like basically that it's like we're building a new engine and something new. So whatever you request for gamesalad also influences the way we think about graphene. And so that's kind of part of the reason we announced it, I think, is just to start getting people thinking about this, what's going to be possible with this, and also just gathering interest and seeing if we can get people, see who's going to get people interested to start signing up early for it.
I'll see what I can do, Jonathan. Like, I only have so many people who can do things. There are a lot of balls we're juggling at the same time, so.
Yeah, I think our big thing right now is trying to get feature parity between the Windows and the Mac version, and so that's consuming most of our.
Yeah, currently, kind of the major thing we're working on now is getting Windows 12 out so that Mac and Windows have the same engine. Then we'll be getting 13 out, which is going to be all the multiplayer stuff, and I believe there's Facebook stuff as well. Yeah.
And the more improved rendering system.
Yeah. But multiplayer is the big one for 13, and then it's user feature requests. So that's kind of our immediate schedule.
Yeah, and of course bug fixing along the way. Like,
well, yeah.
There'll be. I have a list of bugs that you go with QA and go through and see this. I don't think
I'm not. So again, I think we're trying to strike the balance, but from what I understand, I think so. And the reason I'm doing question marks is like I said, I'm not actually working on the graphics project. Part of the reason why I'm confident in my answers is I'm answering things. It's like I don't know completely, but I've seen various versions where it could go either way. I'm thinking they're leaning towards making it possible to complete it without code. And then code is like a value add, like a very strong value add. So.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that I think that's the current design, is that you can finish a game in graphene without using code. So the graphene feature requests have a higher priority than the old gamesalad.
They're two different
teams.
Yeah.
So when I said feature requests, all the feature requests we're putting in are going to be for gamesalad. But what we could do is what people want out of gamesalad can inform what we're going to do with graphene. So consider them feature requests for gamesalad. And if you want to sneak them in as graphene requests, then do it, and we at least will know what you want. And knowing what you want is better than not knowing.
Okay, so I've double checked so I can talk about coding. Okay, so with graphene, yes, you will complete the entire game without coding. Okay. But the advantage is if there's a part that you cannot get through without coding, you can then switch and start coding.
Okay. Do you host your own website for Plays Together? Yes.
Yes.
So we host our own website. It's like, in a rather embarrassing admission, the reason why Plays Together was gone for the last few days was in the transition from the previous Plays Together's company to us, we didn't get, everyone seemed to overlook the access to the actual domain registration. So our domain expired like in January. So basically it was trying to get contact the right people and pay our bills. And that's why Plays Together is back up, it's not fully working.
Yeah.
It's about as broken as was before.
Yeah.
We have access to the servers and we run them, but they're kind of in a separate section of things we do, and they're written in. It's a very different platform, so we're building the skills to work with it.
Any clear idea when Windows 12 will be released? Soon. We have basically a handful of bugs that we're fixing. We do have one major crash bug that we need to look into. The rest are kind of minor things. So. Personally, I'd like to get it out by the end of the month, but I can't guarantee that. However, we're trying to get around that window.
Yeah.
So soon.
Yeah.
It is not RC, but it's in nightly now, right?
Yeah, it's in nightly, and we're working toward an RC build.
Yeah.
Only when we have a list of graphene features will we be able to think about what to request.
Yeah.
That's true, but
we're okay if you won't put pie in the sky dreams like that.
Yeah.
The general idea is, I assume that graphene can do anything that gamesalad do, and doesn't have a lot of things that gamesalad has that's strange. So start from gamesalad and go on forward.
Yeah, let's say there's a feature request that you put in gamesalad that you want to support 2D isometric games. Frankly, that's probably a little much to put in gamesalad, but it might be something that the graphene team can look at and say, oh yeah, we want to do that. So yeah, even though you don't know the feature set of graphene, go ahead and make requests anyway. If there's something that you'd like to see in a 2D multi-platform engine, let us know, and it may influence what's in graphing. Test, yes.
Test, we saw you.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me see if I get that next week. I don't guarantee I'll get it out next week, but let me talk to Code Wizard so I can get something together.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding us. We'll get on it.
Yeah, keep bugging us. I will promise I'll get something. One of the biggest problems is I actually don't know what the roadmap is for 6 months from now. I have the roadmap roughly mapped out for maybe.
Oh no, he's saying it's been 6 months.
Oh, it's been 6 months. Yes, I only have the roadmap in my head. I think I only have I can only think of right now about 4 months worth of features things that we can do, and then I gotta go start looking at your guys' feature requests. So you guys are pretty much building the roadmap as we go.
Yeah, we've actually, obviously this is not for necessarily for people that are currently in the webinar. We actually just kind of went over the roadmap. It's basically Windows 12 to get Windows up to parity with Mac, then Mac and Windows 13 for multiplayer and other small features and bug fixes, and then 14 is AdMob and
bug fixes.
Yep.
So, actually, this is a question I would ask our users. So, new rendering systems, 13 or 14?
13.
13. So, roadmap is, feature parity, new rendering system, plus some minor features.
Multiplayer. Facebook.
And then Facebook, yeah. So, that's our short-term roadmap.
Yeah. Considering the situation with graphing on the forum, shouldn't there be somebody present at this webinar to answer questions?
Yeah,
we're answering questions as much as we legally can. If Code Wizard was here, he wouldn't be able to say anything.
Even more, yeah. I've been talking to him, and so we have all the people here who can answer questions, but we can't talk about all this stuff publicly. It's still in development. Some of the stuff I actually don't have answers for because we're still developing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a kind of a problem with graphing is that, we could tell you things, but we can't guarantee they won't change in 5 minutes from now.
Yeah, the team is working heavily on with users' feedback. We have actual active users who've been using gamesalad for a long time, working with us to help make it better. And I see almost daily changes and improvements. Yeah. So even if I gave information, it may not actually be true the next day.
And then for things like release dates and pricing situations, we don't even have that planned out yet. At least the dev team does. I don't know about the owners of the
company. I'm actually helping with that. No, we don't have anything disclosed.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
So it's a cross between that
Sergeant Schultz, I see nothing.
It's a cross between that and
the
whole if we told you we'd have to tell you things. So
yeah.
Some of the information's secret, some of the information we're still
graphing will be a 3D engine. I don't know, but it will definitely be a 2D engine. Yeah.
I'll find out if we can answer that question. Keep on going.
Yeah. Do you have a business model for gamesalad or graphene? Well, we do have a business model for gamesalad. Well, you know that one.
Yeah.
Like work on a project together. We do not have a business model currently for graphene. So no.
1 second. I can say though that collaborating will be much easier in graphene.
Yes.
Than gamesalad. Actually, it's very easy to collaborate with other users using graphene.
Also,
push notifications for non-play together systems. That is something we have discussed. If you think that's important, make a feature request on Bugzilla and get people to vote for it. Graphing request, it will print money. If you can make the next Angry Birds or Flappy Bird or whatever it is, it will print money for you. Of course, so will gamesalad, but can't help you there. So snap to grid, multiple drop-down, molecular controls realistically going to happen in Creator in the next 6 months. We're going by
what you guys vote for.
Yes. Basically, look at the feature requests on Bugzilla. We are directly going by what people vote for. So if more people vote for snap to grid than are currently voting for AdMob, we will implement snap to grid before AdMob.
I will say that
we are going for user requests. That is the game plan once we get 13 out.
I would guess that based on our current load, no to all of them at once
Yeah, well, we're going one at a time. One thing at a time.
Sure, yeah. It's like, no, it's like, I don't think all of them would get done by 6 months, but I'm guessing if you vote one up, at least one of them would be.
Yeah.
So I got an answer for the 3D. Graphene will be focused on 2D and 2D point. 2.5D.
2.5D.
Ah, 2.5D for now.
Yeah, in other words,
3,
isometric.
and 3D will be later.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I did. Yep.
Well, I was trying to make sure which 2.5D, because there's two kinds of 2.5D.
Thank you, Jesse.
Oh, great. Okay.
Daily improvements are being implemented by the other team. Why not the same on gamesalad?
Well, we are. I've been doing like 3 weeks of daily improvements on memory leaks. So yes.
It depends on what you
In
mean.
general, I need different code bases, different things.
Yeah, and like I said, we do sometimes. Like I actually was part of the graphene team when we started up. So I actually did a bunch of the skeleton work for graphene, and I moved back to gamesalad because we needed to get stuff done in gamesalad. So we hop between the teams, but while they're 2 separate teams, there's 2 people working on separate projects. But yeah, we're doing daily. Steve and I are working on gamesalad daily. Every time I come in here, every day we're working on gamesalad.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things to point out, there are things that are making it over. They weren't designed for graphene, but they're being built into graphene and gamesalad, which there are certain engine improvements that are being built for both. So.
Yeah, that's very true. We're part of the reason we have that new rendering system is because of some of the work graphene's been doing.
Any pricing plans for Plays Together for Pro, or is it nothing going to change? I don't know that.
I think
currently, if you get Pro, you get Plays Together, and they're together. There has been talk about having them separately, so you could be multiplayer but not Pro, but there's nothing planned as far as I personally know.
So there's no plan, and when we start planning this again, my personal preference would be to do something similar to like Parse, where you get it for free for Pro up to a certain like traffic level. Basically, the more successful you get, then the more you start paying us. But over a certain extent, I'm hoping we can keep it free for Pro users until you get wildly successful, and then in which case you shouldn't have that much of a problem giving us some money, right?
Yeah.
So
is AdMod happening? It was a top row.
Yeah, absolutely. 14.
Yes, that is
right now. I'm declaring it 14. That's the feature for 14.
Yeah, and the only way it's not the feature for 14 is if someone puts in a request and more people vote for it than AdMob. But currently AdMob is the #1 feature request.
Yep. So 14 we'll start doing user feature requests. Thank you for voting, and yep.
And keep voting.
And keep voting.
I'm not suing or saying, but the pictures on graphing stuff are really from graphing, like 3D stuff. The pictures we have been posting are indeed pictures from.
Yeah, we haven't doctored any. That one that's on the forum thread that CodeWizard posted is a screenshot from graphing.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that.
We are not photoshopping anything. It's
The
literally
3D-ishness is actually from the artwork. Like the person who's doing the artwork is really good at giving that 3D look and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Metal for graphing?
Let me double check.
I will say our lead graphics guy loves metal. He thinks it's the bomb.
How about I do this?
If Brian has anything to do with it, there will be, but we're not guaranteeing it for him.
I will say we'll have metal for gamesalad.
Oh, really?
Yes, we will have metal for gamesalad.
Oh, then likely we'll have metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never mind, that's legit. Yeah.
Yes, we told you, we don't talk
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, no, it really is. I've seen it in action, and yes, it looks like that.
Cross-platform creators, I mean, we're probably going to be able to do this on tablets, like...
We don't have it running on tablets right now. We like to start with what people normally use.
I will say that is a personal goal of CodeWizard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness, that's...
So he wants to make games on the can.
That's what, yes!
So we're using a technology called Qt, which has been around forever.
Yeah.
And they support a ton of platforms. So we have the ability to go to all the platforms that support it.
Assuming the back end works.
tablets now,
Assuming the back end
RAM and
works.
stuff, and I'm like,
Assuming the back end works.
Oh,
that's GUI.
So the complexity of what we can do
Which is
now
on Android.
with the first run probably won't go
So far, we're on everything
but it's
except for
trying to
Qt. I don't think Qt is
Why is GameSalad still in beta? Good question.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on that.
Partly because we never got the whole, like we have a Windows version and a Mac version that never got caught up to each other.
There has been talk about once Mac and Windows get to parity, which again to effectively call that release or the next release one. But It's just a name.
Yeah, I think we'll.
It wasn't dated for 10 years.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we feel comfortable and we think that we're at the point where everybody's happy, we'll talk about doing that. But like I said, for now it's just a number. Like.
Yeah, it's just a number. It's just a name. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yes, we're actually working on that next week. I'm sorry. The question is 64-bit iOS support going to be ready for users can in February? Yes. Steve and I are going to work on that next week.
Yes.
And I will be putting that probably up the week following or that week. So you'll have like a week buffer between the time and when it's released in February.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Apple.
Yes, thank you, Apple. Question, checking games. Yeah, okay, so the question is this question is regarding the Upside Play Haven, which is now actually Play Haven because Upside sold Play Haven to another company. That's really confusing now. But anyway, Play Haven is now its own company again. More game widgets. The more game widget. As now, Apple is rejecting games with more games widgets due to advertising, other games. Is there any workaround or suggestions how to improve this? I would have to go talk to Playhaven, but
The short answer, ask Playhaven, because that combined with a whole lot of other issues were part of the reason why we spun it off so you could work with them directly. And we had actually even considered completely cutting off Playhaven, but we figured we already did the work, put it in there, and a lot of y'all are using it, so leave it in there. But ask them, we don't know.
yeah. Let me make sure there's no other hand raising there.
That's I think it's
Is Google Play worth porting to because of all the hacking?
Personal question. You should have to ask yourself.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of. You're gonna have to research that yourself. Like these app systems, these markets change so much and so rapidly that you're just gonna have to go do your own research, decide for yourself whether you think it's a good fit for your game.
Yeah.
I've seen so many drag force things, and looking how much Amazon's starting to push its dominance over. Right, they pulled all their stuff from Google Play, so now you can't use any of the Amazon services on the Google Play market or the Android devices. So, one thing is, I think what was the thing was when app purchase didn't work anymore because they pulled that?
No, that was actually a technical issue.
There was something they pulled recently that doesn't work anymore on Android stores because the services, the Android Market services are no longer there because they pulled them off the store.
Yeah, Amazon does not allow Android or Play services, but Play, I think, still allows Android.
Yeah, there's other weird things.
Services, yeah, but not iOS.
Oh,
You can't cross-platform iOS.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And there's certain things that connect to the iOS system, so they connect with it, that you also can't use those either.
Personally, I go for Google Play, thinking in terms of back in the days of not back in the days, much like PC development. At some point, people are going to hack and play with, or hack and screw with, and pirate your games. So the idea is whether you just want them out there for people to try, and a portion of those people get converted to people who like you enough to pay and invest.
Yeah. What was the name of the game that?
Careful with your research. Lots of misleading numbers out there.
What was the name of the game that we were talking about, Ellen, earlier?
Which one?
The one, the 3D game where it looks like an Escher painting.
Oh, my Valley.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the article that came out recently, but the people that made Monument Valley were talking about how much money they made on iOS versus Android, and they were saying something like 90% of the
95% unpaid on Android.
Yeah.
60% unpaid on Apple.
Yeah.
But those numbers are actually really, really skewed, which is why I was saying be careful, is because on an Apple device, or say you buy it on your iPhone and you download it to your iPad, one of those versions is unpaid according to them, and so that gives you like that 50%,
Yeah.
And so that it may not actually be hackers, it could just be that Android people have lots of devices, and they legally put it on all their devices, and that lowers the number.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure there are some hackers and pirators, but
yeah, it's definitely easier to hack an Android device than it is an iOS device. So yeah, it's something you have to decide for yourself, really.
But they still have over they're between 100,000 and 500,000 sales.
Oh yeah.
There's still money to be made.
Let's put it this way: if you've got a good game, put it out there on everything because people will play it. If you've got a game and the only way you're making money is just throwing ads at people, well, maybe you should make a better game.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly. And Harris asking, is graphing going to support 60-bit right off the bat? Do you mean As in what graphene is going to run as, or do you mean as what graphene will produce as a final product?
Well, yeah. The answer is yes, because Apple requires 64-bit, and Google released the latest operating system is 64-bit, and then we can assume that sometime in the future, just like Apple did, Google will require binary to also be 64-bit.
Yeah.
So yes, it will not only will graphene be totally 64-bit, gamesalad will as well, because we'll have to change it. Yeah, Monument Valley and 3 is, yeah, they're both things that have reported much better sales on iOS than Google Play. Nevertheless, people do make a lot of money on Google Play. So.
Yeah, you're just going to have to kind of see what...
Yeah, you have to decide for yourself.
Besides, if you're using something like gamesalad, porting is not very hard.
That's true. You can build pretty much for a usable game, just
right. Unless your game's over, what is it,
50 megs, but I'll try to get together another talk about the new rendering system. With the new rendering system, you should be able to very easily squeeze your game down even under that.
Yeah.
But I think actually the additional APK is actually like number 9 or 10 on the feature request list.
Yeah.
So I really hate the way Google did it. It's very clunky. Like you click it and you're like, oh, I got the game, and then you gotta wait for like another
part.
Yeah, and apparently if you don't have permissions, I found this on the Nook. If you don't have permissions to download, you'll actually confidently try to download the APK, and you have to get somebody who has actual permissions to actually download it. It's a really terrible system. It's not a very well put together system. I really like Apple's better, where they just like, here's the amount, and here's the amount of wireless.
Exactly.
Just like Amazon did. I think that's the better way to go, personally. I think the way that Google did it is clunky and weird. And
when is the new rendering engine for gamesalad going to be available, fully working? Actually,
because it's in nightly.
On Windows, on the nightly Mac and the nightly Windows, they're currently both using the new engine, which means that actually when Windows 12 is released, it will actually have the new rendering engine officially released before the Mac version. But yeah, both of them are currently out there.
Yeah, and Steve and I have been working through the bugs. Once I get off of doing these pieces and get iOS 64-bit out the door, I'll switch back and help out getting those done. Yeah. So like I said, one thing at a time. You just have to walk through the thing. And also, if you want to get a hold of Graphene earlier, go sign up for the beta at graphenesdk.com. We'll be adding testers and people can get early access to it and try it out, and you can make games in it. I know there's some people working on some stuff with it. Any more questions? Do you have any polls, Han?
Well, it's 9, so I'm just not going to run some polls and keep things going.
All right. So any other last questions? Oh, I have a few more, Han.
When is the next proper gamesalad due? Like I said, Windows 12 around the end of the month-ish.
And the Mac stable, the Mac 12 stable, I'm trying to get out in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then Windows will come out ideally in January or in February.
Yeah, January, February time.
And then
and the 13, well, like as you well know, for the people that are working on multiplayer games, there's several multiplayer bugs that need to be worked out. We also need to get one of our web team guys to take a look at the server side of it and work on a couple of bugs there and get the website better. So we're not sure how long that's going to take, but we're going to try to get it out as quickly as we can, and then we can start working on feature requests and whatnot.
It depends, Scott. So Scott's asking about his game not running as fast on iPhone 6 because of RAM not increasing versus iPhone 5. So part of it may be, it depends on the game, depends how you do things, depends which version of the engine you're running. It could be a lot of factors.
Some of it. So 6 Plus is more powerful, but remember also you're playing with bigger images.
Yeah, and we'll also say, like, I know we need to fix some stuff with the whole, being able to better like align and alignment tools in gamesalad. But if you have a giant image that takes up the entire size of the iPhone, that is extremely costly to render and will slow down your game. It's much better if you take that and break it apart into individual images and composite into the scene you'll get a much faster performance.
That's probably something we should talk about in the future.
Yep, it's on my list as a presentation.
Yeah.
I'll be doing that one. But yeah, think about compositing. Instead of putting everything in composite in Photoshop, try thinking compositing in gamesalad. You'll get much better speed, and when we move to the next newer rendering engine, you will see drastic improvements that way. Oh, the APA thing, well, I'll make sure we get that fixed. Oh, it's right there. I just checked. It's there.
Anything else? Any final questions?
And you're wondering why I'm laughing. It's the graphene SDK links are tied. Basically, they're referral based as well, and we're deciding how much weight to put on it. But there's probably going to be some weight on the number of people you refer into graphene as to how soon you get data. I'm not sure it's going to be the biggest factor because we're also going to weigh your history of the community and what kind of games you can make for us. But I'm sure that weighing will become a factor. So once you register and get that link, start sharing it.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know. Like we're not developing this in a silo. We're working with gamesalad community members to make this a better product to help you all, and to these problems you have with gamesalad, we're trying to help solve some of those with graphene. All right, so that's it. Let you guys know. Thanks for coming to the meetup. Next month. Thank you, Steve, for giving a great presentation on the Place Together.
And we'll get the audio and the slides up as soon as we can.
Yeah, and so many issues with multiplayer stuff. I'll try to get those higher up in the queue and get someone to fix those. Next week we'll be talking about the IAP system and how to do really cool things with the new. Next month we'll be talking about how to do the really cool stuff with the new IAP system, and we'll have our second user presentation. And if you guys want to present, please let me know. I'm always looking for more presenters and more topics. Also, if you're in Dallas, there's a Dallas meetup group this month. 13th is that what it is? Yeah. So if you're in Dallas, go say hi to those guys. Or if you want to have a meetup in your area, let me know. If you want to host a GameStop meetup in your area, we can give you access to announcing those meetups on our meetup group and in the forums. So come email me and let me know if you guys will do that. So thanks everyone for coming to this month's meetup.
Bye.
I'm so excited about the idea of being able to create games on a tablet. Like, oh, I've been waiting. That's the only thing that I really want to do abandoned Windows. Like, I'm just like, okay.